When I was in high school, I played my first D&D game. It was the Lost Mines of Phandelver, and I played a gnome druid named Grey Oak. Grey Oak didn't see much play as it was more of a one-time thing, but she was around long enough to poison spray herself in the face with a natural 1. After that, there was Lost the Tiefling Warlock, then there was the Leandra, the Eladrin Gloomstalker, and Namira, the Tiefling Cleric, Phineas Pumberton, the Kobold Wizard, and many, many more, until today where I play Aster, the Swarm Ranger Circle of Stars Druid combo, and Cassiopeia, the Divination Wizard Yuan-Ti. I even have the rare pleasure of saying I DM'd a 3-year-long homebrew campaign to completion. Which is to say that D&D has been a huge part of my life for about 10 years now. It feeds my need to tell stories, creates a framework for me to experiment with developing characters, and provides a reason for my friends and I to hang out every weekend. I also have a long love for RPGs, from Fable for the Xbox in 2004, the Dragon Age series I did on this channel 3 years ago, and a new Skyrim playthrough practically every year. If a game tells me to play as a custom character and build my own story, I probably like it. So when Baldur's Gate 3 was described to me as an RPG that's basically video game D&D, I had a feeling I was going to like it. I was wrong. My friends and I bought it in early access, and together we beat Act 1 once. Alone, I did it 2 more times. Then the full release came out, and I now have well over 200 hours played on this game. I love this game. I love it with every fiber of my being, and so I must do what I always do when something gets me this emotionally invested. I'm going to rant about it. But first, the spoiler summary. This game is best played spoiler-free, so for the most part I am only going to talk in generalities and show footage from Act 1. When I begin to discuss anything after Act 1, I will give a verbal warning so you can skip if you like. So let's descend into the gates, shall we? Let's start with the basics. First, you don't need to play the first 2 games to understand this one. I haven't played Baldur's Gate 1 or 2, and I was able to jump into the game without any problems. If you have played the previous games, you are rewarded with Easter eggs and references, but nothing that would diminish the actual gameplay or story if you were unaware this was a trilogy. You will, however, benefit from a basic understanding of D&D lore. This game doesn't hold your hand. It refuses to do big lore dumps and exposition to get you up to speed. If you don't know anything about the world of Faerun, you're going to need to pay attention to the subtle and not so subtle hints about the world that come from the characters simply living it. And I think that's actually marvelous. This is a game that embraces the fact it is a game without sacrificing the immersion of the world building. Everything is cinematic. It feels like you are building your own movie. The way that simple conversations feel so vitally important simply because the camera angle changes to show off animations and expressions. It's gripping. It honestly makes every character interaction larger than just what you get out of it. You want to talk to every NPC, you want to see what happens after every line because each reaction is like its own scene, with different emotions or actions taking place rather than a PNG saying different words. You learn so much about the world from small interactions with the general people, and yet it feels as cinematic as the main story scenes. And it's made even better by the fact your own character is just as emotive. Sure, they won't have any voice lines during conversations, but their face will react in delight or disgust or any other range of emotions which brings them to life. It is the most immersive element of the game, making every verbal interaction its own playable cutscene. Which is always a treat because the game looks fantastic when it's fully loaded. I'm not sure how my computer compares anymore, but it isn't cheap, and it did take a minute to load textures and cutscenes and parts of the environment. It loaded fast enough that I wasn't too bothered by any of it, but it is an imperfection that is very noticeable. But when it loads, gods, does this game look pretty. It has the small details like complex cloth textures and dynamic lighting, and it has big set pieces like decrepit crypts and glowing mushroom colonies. The maps are huge, and it feels like every square inch is filled with something. Maybe a monster to fight, or an item to steal, or maybe a secret to unlock. It's a wonder to explore every inch to try and find every strange NPC or item that Larian hid in this vast world of theirs. I've already told you how I've completed Act 1 at least 4 times now, and yet I'm still finding things or watching other people find things that I had no clue existed. Each and every moment is a visual feast of things to discover, and every step is accompanied by a fantastic narrator.
Power courses through you. Authority.
Amelia Tyler is amazing. Her voice is just the right combination of serious and playful. It's a voice I never feel interrupted by because I actually want to hear more. It almost feels like a reward when I do something or get somewhere and the narrator starts to talk about how my character feels or an event that occurs. Actually, all the voice acting feels like a treat because this game sounds wonderful. I think there was only one voice I remember not fitting quite right for me, and that character wasn't important in any way. But every other voice, especially your main companions' voices, are all so good. They all are putting everything into every performance, from the derision of Lysel to the snark of Astarion. The only comment I feel needs to be made is that sometimes a voice line sounds weird or quiet, and in Act 1 there are some clear moments where the voice actors recorded in a different room because they have a different audio quality to their lines. I'm not sure if that's super noticeable to a general audience, or if I hear it because YouTube has made me hyper aware of audio quality, but it was never awful. It was just a noticeable difference that threw me off for a second or two. But I never remember that because listen to these voice actors go.
What in the sweet hells were you thinking, activating that lance? I was right there! Gods! Do you have any idea how much that hurt? Well, apparently there's a limit. Somewhere between a nice summer's day and the full concentrated power of the sun!
That is a man who is having the time of his life. The Baldur's Gate soundtrack is also divine. It hits as this folk and fantasy sound that brings you to a world of dragons and bards immediately. It has this beautiful, soft music that conveys vulnerability and times of rest, and it has this deep, angry war chanting that prepares you for battle. It even has that one boss song with lyrics that makes you stop and go, "Oh, fuck. This is really happening." Though I won't lie, it did make me laugh the first time I heard it because it was just so out of left field that I had to smile at its absurdity. And it was a good smile because, yeah, this is a game and I'm supposed to be having fun, and what is more fun than demonic poetry during a boss fight? And I think that's part of the magic. This game isn't afraid to be a little silly. The animals are a hoot, from a strange ox who definitely is just an ox to the squirrels that can't stand the bard singing. You can kill a person and then lie to the witnesses that they totally tried to kill you first. Sometimes you steal and it's a treasure of great worth. Sometimes you steal and it's a ghostly spectator out to kill you. Sometimes you open a chest and it's a mimic. You can shove almost anyone down the multitude of giant pits of Faerun, you can run around naked and have people comment on it, you can have sex with a bear, because of course if you lived in a world with people who could transform into highly intelligent and consenting animals, you'd be curious. Don't lie, the views speak for themselves. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Baldur's Gate 3 is just so big and so well crafted that to discuss any one part of the game is almost impossible because everything ties into everything else. No one part takes center stage over anything else. But if I was going to discuss one thing first, I think I'd choose... Baldur's Gate is an experience, but first and foremost, it is a video game, and so in order to be good, it has to have satisfying gameplay. And it is satisfying, but also very specific. Baldur's Gate is a CRPG, or computer roleplay game, which doesn't mean much at first, but implies a lot. CRPGs are an older genre of game that has kind of fizzled out amongst modern gaming titles, but it's an RPG with turn-based combat, isometric or top-down view, and usually choice-driven story. Think Dragon Age Origins or Divinity Original Sin 2. The main draw to these games is the tactical element of combat combined with a robust dialogue system that makes you feel like the adventure is yours. And that is what Baldur's Gate 3 thrives on. The combat system is magic. Literally magic. There are so many options and tactics you can use to complete any encounter that even your fighting style is your own. You generally control 4 characters. When you get into combat, you have initiative rolled and everything happens according to that turn order. When it's your turn, you follow D&D 5e rules, where you get 1 action, 1 bonus action, and movement. After that, well, it's up to you. You can attack with your weapon, sure, but you can also cast a concentration spell that makes your opponent fall prone laughing, or a melee spell that heats the metal of their armor and weapons to an unbearable temperature so they have to drop them. Or maybe you want to go completely nuts and grab your party member and use them as a weapon. Yes, there are requirements to do all of those things, but they're all possible. My bard loved to use area of effect spells on the easy targets, while my rogue would use ranged sneak attacks on the tougher bosses. And my fighter would just smack people with the flaming sword she got off the body of a demon general we defeated at level 1 by buffing a mind flayer while taking potshots from the side. And my cleric... Okay, so maybe your eyes have glazed over and you don't know what I'm talking about anymore. And that's what I mean when I say the game's gameplay is phenomenal, but specific. This isn't a game that tries to make everything accessible to a general audience. This game has tutorials, but most of the learning is pulling knowledge from D&D and other CRPGs, or trial and error. It is not beginner friendly, but also that's kind of part of the fun. Even I didn't know you could throw people until someone else did it and put a video on YouTube. It just wasn't something I wanted to do. It wasn't my playstyle. There are so many things you can do that to tell you every option or combo would be obnoxious and boring. Finding out if that crazy idea you had will actually work is part of the gameplay. Push the system to cheese a boss. Mix and match effects to get around resistances and immunities. This game was made for you to try things and then rework and rework and rework until you put together your team's perfect synergy. And I literally mean it when I say it was designed for this. CEO of Larian Studios, Sven Vinci, my good friend Sven, said that he gets videos of people trying new combos and tactics that he hadn't even considered before, and that was the point. They made systems that have rules, but no predefined outcomes, so if the rules don't conflict, you can do whatever you think of. And that's bolstered by the game's class system. Just like in D&D, you get to make your character one of the 12 classes, each with subclasses and feats that further individualize your characters. Some of these classes have different strengths and abilities that can inform how you play. For example, a druid has the ability to change into animals so you can speak to animals freely and fly dig meow at will. A paladin has an oath they must follow to maintain their powers, so your decisions may revolve around maintaining it. On the higher difficulties, you can even multi-class or take part of your power from multiple classes in one playthrough. I've played 5 different classes so far, and there hasn't been one I inherently hated. I'm sure there are ways to make builds or combos that are just plain bad, but then you just go to your friendly neighborhood skeleton wizard and for the low price of $99.99, he'll let you change it all again. And all of that is just combat, which is only half the game. The other half is exploration and dialogue. In D&D and Baldur's Gate, you have 6 attributes that represent the various things your character is good or bad at. Strength, dexterity, constitution, wisdom, intelligence, and charisma. These attributes determine additional modifiers that you engage with the game's main mechanic, the dice roll. Like tabletop D&D, everything is determined by the roll of a dice. In combat, it's practically invisible as all rolls are done in the background and you just see if it succeeded or failed. But in dialogue, you get to see a d20 load up, and then the applicable modifiers to help you reach the DC, or the goal that allows you to succeed. You can get stupidly good at one type of skill fairly easily. When exploring, various challenges will be placed before you that require you to use what you have to overcome them. Sometimes that's as simple as jumping a gap. If you have a high strength, you might be able to jump it with powerful thighs alone, but if you have terrible strength, you might have a couple of scrolls or spells that allow you to fly or teleport over. More complex problems might test your specific skills, like a medicine check on a corpse or an animal handling check on a dog. Every skill is involved in something major and helps build out the personality of your character, and will inform how you choose to solve problems throughout the story. My favorite attribute and my favorite part of the game itself is charisma. I love my charisma classes. Who cares about swinging your sword 6 times in one turn, or transforming into a badger, or calling on literal gods for help? I want to be a plucky bard who can convince a hag to let me save the damsel in distress while also giving me a magical buff in exchange for her life. I want to literally hurt people with the power of insults. And I want to get by the toughest fights without lifting a finger because my tongue is as silver as my sword. Nothing makes me feel more alive than convincing everyone I meet that listening to me is the only correct option. And considering I write video essay rants about my opinions on the internet, I don't think this surprises anyone. Talking to NPCs is as fun as combat. They have such interesting things to say, and you have such interesting ways to respond in every situation. You can be snarky, sincere, or mean. You can ask a lot of questions, or you can respect privacy and secrets not ready to be divulged. And with a high enough persuasion or deception score, you can get almost anyone to talk about anything. I convinced some people not to fight, while I convinced others that fighting was the right thing to do. I got a heavy discount while purchasing an artist, and convinced a goblin to give me this owlbear for free. Nothing felt out of my reach. And that's the best part of the entire gameplay package. No matter what part you like best, there is probably a way to use it to get whatever you want. No part of this game has one solution. There are a lot of hidden die rolls and skills like history or perception that can alter the difficulty of a puzzle or show you a secret button, but there are also magical spells that might help you get by without solving the puzzle, or an alternate route behind a crumbling wall your fighter broke down. Or maybe you get through a quest by simply being the right species that an NPC trusts. There is no right way to play, no correct solution. It is all about what you want to try with your character. And what you want matters so much to this game. The D20 system might be the foundation of the game, but when you want to take a look at what truly makes this game the superstar everyone claims it to be, well, we gotta talk about the story. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game about your character going on an epic quest to save yourself and your companions from the mind flayer tadpoles inside your head. It's a story that starts and ends with this one goal, and yet through adventuring in the world and learning more about the unusual circumstances you all find yourselves in, you branch into more and more goals, the culmination of which determines the fate of Faerun. What I like about the game's story is the simplicity of the overarching plot made complex by its execution. Let me explain what I mean. Let's look at one portion of the story, the tadpole infection. The actual narrative is pretty simple to understand. You are infected by tadpoles and you want a cure. Everyone, no matter their familiarity with D&D or Baldur's Gate or fantasy RPGs in general, can understand that motivation and has an idea of what they're looking for. But then, Larian throws a kink into the system by introducing you to the Dream Guardian. The Dream Guardian protects you from the infection, but they also tell you to embrace the powers gifted by the tadpoles. Most of your companions disagree. Now you still know that your end goal is to cure yourself, but you have to decide if you trust the Dream Guardian, and if so, how far. And that is an actual decision because unlike a Bethesda game where the choices are binary, you do or you don't, Larian's choices are more nuanced. You can work together without trust. You can work together with the goal of betrayal. You can trust wholeheartedly, and you can dismiss the idea entirely. And this is what I think makes the game's story so brilliant. It's still understandable because the main goal is still simple. In the end, you are still just a group of very sick people looking for a cure. But by making twists and turns within that narrative, the story gets more complex without losing sight of the end goal. And I love how this game makes you doubt everyone, from clearly shifty people trying to get a deal out of you to your own companions. Everyone has their own agenda, and it's your job to discover what everyone really wants so you can make decisions on what you're willing to do to remove this parasite. And this isn't just the big characters either. I met this gnome fellow in a looted village and saved him. Then I met him again in an underground forge where he had been enslaved, so I saved him again. He was very grateful, and his whole goal is to help his friend who was kidnapped by the cultists I'm fighting. So it should be a no-brainer that in my good guy playthrough I save his friend too, right? Except the way he talks and some insight checks lead my character to believe he and his gnome buddies are hiding something. But what could it be? And is it that bad or just personal? This is what makes the breadth of decisions so impactful, because you don't know how agreeing to help him now will affect you until hours down the line when you finally get to saving his friend. I helped a girl resurrect her zombie husband and now they're heading to Baldur's Gate. I saved the tieflings, so now they're headed there too. I gave this tome of scary necromantic energy to this power-hungry vampire so I could get in his pants. All of these are decisions that changed my future and how I was able to interact with the game later. And this is a mature game, so some of these decisions and options can be pretty dark. Child death, cannibalism, torture, racism, all of these are found in Act 1, and all of them are things you can participate in with your character. I don't think any of it is overly showy, like you don't get a cutscene of your character cooking up their least favorite companion, and you are never forced to participate if you or your character are against it, but the options are still there and the game is not afraid to ask you to push your limits. There is some gruesome imagery and a general theme of body horror, but as an adult, that only added to the weight of my decisions. This game wasn't afraid to give me real consequences for taking bad actions. And that ties into the most impressive feature of this game. Probably its key selling point. This game allows you to be whomever you want, and it encourages you no matter what path you take. I like being the bad guy in video games. I think it's funny to be cartoonishly evil, but most games don't really have that as an option. At least, not satisfyingly. I often think of this in reference to the Fable series, where I could be bad, but then I'd also have to be ugly, and there was only one way to be bad, and that was by burning the orphanage down to build a brothel. And yeah, that's fun once, but where is the nuance? I want to be evil and smart, not just pick the clearly not good option from a list of 2. This game allows you to build your own morality. There are options and paths that are designed for the monetarily minded, for the heroically destined, for the cautiously unattached, and for the nefariously scheming. You can get what you want through violence, you can lie your way out of battle, or you can knock out your opponents instead of killing them. The breadth of choice is amazing. You're also never locked into a category either. If you are a good person, but you just really hate the Myconids, there is nothing stopping you from killing them all. Everything has its own consequences, but you can fluctuate in morality as long as you accept these consequences. And I loved this so much because being evil was fun. Some characters hated my guts, but some appreciated my brutality. I teamed up with no one faction. I was in it all for myself. And the game let me. The entire time the game asked me what my end goal was, and I told it, world domination, and it replied, hell yeah, let's do it! And when I didn't particularly want to be a cannibal, or I helped out a woman because I wanted to assert my dominance on a hag, the game didn't make assumptions that I was a good guy now. I got to be the kind of evil I wanted to be. What allows this freedom is the fact the game is designed with the question of, but what if, always around the corner? How would the game continue if this NPC was dead? How would this quest resolved if this item was stolen? If you punt a squirrel at a tree and no one is around to see it, did you get away with murder? But the game is built to make a way for you to progress even when you've tried to do everything wrong. Because there is no wrong. It's just your story. And if your story involves killing everyone you meet, well, that's your choice. No NPC is invincible, not even your companions. There are very few ways for your game to end prematurely, and all of those have valid plot points that explain the end of your adventure. In the end, how the game plays is entirely dependent on you. The companion stories are a highlight as well. Each companion has their own questline to complete, and each has multiple endings, some achieved earlier by making key decisions, and some taking them all the way to Act 3. Every moment you spend with these characters is a joy because they clearly worked hard to make these people seem real. They have secrets they want to keep, likes and dislikes, other characters they get along with, and those that they don't. It really feels like you're traveling with 6 people, and not just cutouts of a fighter, a wizard, and a rogue. They also have unexpected ties to the story, so bringing them around the world rewards you with unique dialogue and motivations that build into your personal playthrough even more. And these characters are incredibly lovable and funny. There are hundreds of lines of dialogue that you can get randomly by walking with a unique pair, or by talking to a specific NPC, or by bringing them to a big event. The writers must have loved these characters because there is so much charm and attitude in everyone. There is not a single companion that feels boring. There is not a single companion I don't want to talk to and try to figure out. I almost felt paralyzed just having to choose only 3 to actually travel with. I really grew to love these characters as I adventured with them. Oh, that reminds me. Romance is the secret sauce of RPGs that I feel like everyone sleeps on. If you go to a normal review or first impression video of Baldur's Gate 3, I'm pretty confident that the only talk about romance is the fact that it's there and there are sex scenes. Insert joke about bear sex here. Have sex with a bear because, of course, if you lived in a world with people who could transform into highly intelligent and consenting animals, you'd be curious. Don't lie, the views speak for themselves. Hey, my use of the bear sex joke was superb. But that's neither here nor there. When most people think about RPGs, they think about combat and fate-altering decisions, not stealing kisses and nights under the stars. And I understand why. But I think one of the key parts of a good RPG is the ability to bond with the major characters. A good adventure is only as fun as the companions you travel with, and a major way we bond with those characters is when we fall in love. I've only romanced one character. Twice. But if the other options are written half as well, then Larian has done a fantastic job of making romance roots that not only complement the story, but elevate it. The game acknowledges when you bonded with one character over others. It allows you to make your character place their love interest as a major priority in their lives. Dialogue changes and choices become available that let you tell a story about your character falling in love and valuing that new relationship even among all this other fate-altering nonsense. And don't worry about your low charisma, this game is very horny, as in, everybody wants to bang you almost as a default. I hadn't even saved the druids and tieflings yet, and I had already gotten 4 separate invitations to be intimate with my party mates. Okay, so it seems that it was a bug and your companions are not supposed to want to constantly jump your bones. But I think it's actually a great feature, and maybe Larian can do me a solid and not fix this one, okay? Overall, I am stunned by how well integrated and fulfilling playing a romance out is. It feels like it was a part of the experience Larian actually cared about, where other games would just tack it on as set dressing. But I can't talk in further detail without spoilers, so this is your warning for the rest of the romance section. I'm going to talk about the specific romance track with Astarion, so feel free to skip here if you want to avoid my attempt at critically fangirling. So... Astarion is the current love of my life. My first playthrough was a chaotic, selfish, evil, dark urge character, and what complements that more than a hot, sassy vampire? I went into it thinking I'd get the first sex scene from early access, and then maybe another later, but that would be the depth of the romance route. And why wouldn't I think that? Dragon Age romances are mostly a series of scenes as you get closer, before the actual romance being maybe 2 scenes you can replay at will. Skyrim's romance is just showing your sick necklace to other people in the hopes that they like it, and Fable's romance is just grabbing a couple random NPCs and dancing with them until they think you're the bee's knees. Most RPGs just don't care about a thrilling romantic storyline as a necessity. But when I got to Act 2 and I saw the discussion after meeting a Raj, I was stunned. Here was this character who had talked about being intimate as easily as one talks about the weather, telling me he's starting to realize he's been treating himself like an object and he wants to take some time to figure out if he even wants to be intimate with anyone. And that may seem like a small thing to you, but to me, it was the entire world. That was a choice that made the character real. Absolutely and utterly real. It goes against every convention to have a character you think you've already successfully romanced come and tell you they need to slow down, that being vulnerable is difficult and they don't know how they feel because they were using sex as a defense mechanism. But that's such a human response. I wasn't frustrated that our relationship seemed to take a step back. In fact, it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like this was the first step to a real heartfelt relationship, and I still got the ability to smooch him whenever I liked, so I wasn't bothered. In fact, I was more excited than ever to finish his questline and see what growth his character would face next. Larian didn't need to make this choice for a character everyone would have already loved regardless, because he is a hot vampire, but they did anyway, and now I think I'm ruined because I was supposed to change up who I romanced in my second run, but I couldn't because this was just so good and I can't break his heart like that. But then you get to Act 3 and you see that Astarion's romance can actually branch due to your choices. He can either become the vampire ascendant or remain a vampire spawn. And depending on your choice, he's either emotionally available to you in the traditional sweet way, or he's loving, but in a possessive way. As a certified bad guy, I let Astarion ascend, and afterwards he was confident and ready to re-engage with my character. But everything had this air of dubiousness to it. I was never certain if he meant what he said when he told me he loved me and that he wanted to give me the world. There was this feeling that he might just be using what you want to hear to keep you close, to keep you as his. He'll even turn you into his own vampire spawn, though he promises to give you his ascendant benefits and never control you. But I loved this too, because I was evil, and my character would lie to get what she wants, so this felt like quid pro quo. And it never gets shown to be a lie, so if you want what he says to be the truth, then it is. It allows you to build out what happens after in your own way. Is this a tragedy, or is this the start of a major evil power couple? That's how I felt my run ended, but I've read some great fanfictions that felt differently, and it's such an addictive romantic ending that gives you so much room to play with. And I have to give special thanks to Larian for allowing me to romance Astarion and be evil, and still giving me something that felt satisfying. Evil playthroughs are usually emotionally devoid of content because romanceable characters tend to be at least neutral, if not totally good. I loved that several times in my playthrough as an awful person, Astarion was by my side cheering me on. There was one moment, right after I tortured a guy for fun, where he told me I was given a bad hand, but I should play it for all it was worth, and my heart skipped a beat. And that's just one romance. Just one. And that's not even everything that can happen to you both. There are so many little scenes and dialogue changes that represent where you are in your romance, how close you are to this character. And I keep finding more little things that change every time I play. Little scenes or exchanges that only appeared because I made what I thought was an inconsequential decision. I feel like I could do this one romance 10 times and still find something new every time. And that's not even mentioning the clear growth in affection that happens gradually over time. When I finished my evil playthrough and immediately jumped to a good guy run, I was startled by how Astarion talked to my character. I had forgotten that his original disposition was so harsh and selfish. He had legitimately changed over the course of my playthrough enough that seeing early Astarion so close to endgame Astarion felt like talking to someone wholly new and yet familiar. And that's amazing. Larian didn't have to go this hard. They didn't have to make the romance just as complex as everything else. Had they just had Astarion thank me after taking down Cazador and tell me he loves me, I would have been fine. It would have been a normal RPG romance. But by putting so much effort into this, I am now more invested in the whole story. I now want to work that much harder for a satisfying ending. I want to play so much more of the game. I don't want to skip anything for fear that I would miss out on these beautiful moments. And that's the power of a good romance. One good romance. If the others are even close to this, I'm going to be playing Baldur's Gate for the next decade. And I would be remiss to leave out the breadth of romances in this game. Sure, my heart belonged to the Bloodsucker, but I also had a night with twin drow, a dalliance with a devil, and turned down a romp with a squid. There are polyamorous relationships. There are relationships you need to build over a long span of time. There are purely carnal relationships, and the game never judges you for it. In fact, there's actually a nice conversation you can have with the prostitutes that affirms they love their job, and they have a sex-positive outlook on life. Falling in love or just having some fun, the romantic side of this game is just as customizable and unique as every other part of your journey. But while I might end up rotating through companions as I fall in love with literally anyone and anything, one part of my character might always stay the same. Because the romance is fantastic. But Larian's best work has to be... I'm going to come out and say what everyone knows to be true, but is too cowardly to admit. Fan fiction is the highest form of art. Good fan fiction, the best fan fiction, takes a beloved story and adds the little selfish things that you want, but don't feel like you're allowed to want. Like Harry and Draco being gay, like Silco falling in love with a reader self-insert who becomes Jinx's mom, like your Mary Sue My Hero Academia character who's the daughter of a powerful supervillain but is actually good, and the love interest of Bakugo dealing with her incredibly dangerous powers that make her the secret strongest person on the planet. That or it's just smut. Lots of smut. The Dark Urge is like Larian made their own incredible fanfiction within their own game, and you get to play it out in your own way. It's got all the little details and scenes everyone selfishly craves within a story all about you. Absolutely everything about the Dark Urge is about you. It makes the main story your story. It makes the world bend to your will. It makes you special and powerful. It is selfish, self-gratifying, and self-serving, and it fills my heart with unspeakable joy. And it is just as variable as every other part of this game. You can be good, you can be bad, you can be a mix of the two. The Dark Urge doesn't make you play a certain way, it's an enhancement to your personal story that gives you more to play with. And I ate up every moment like the delectable dessert it was. So on to the significant spoilers for the Dark Urge story and the main story. Please skip to here if you want to keep the Dark Urge a secret for yourself. Also, the Dark Urge is, well, dark. So, a warning for some gruesome visuals and mature themes in this section. The Dark Urge starts as additional dialogue given by the narrator about your lost memories and your dark feelings about blood and corpses. Immediately, you are allowed to set your own tone, whether you embrace these feelings, are confused and worried about them, or reject them outright. During Act 1, little dialogue choices will pop up that allow you to explore these feelings more. Whenever you talk to people about the parasite, you also get to mention the bloodlust and the memory loss as part of your symptoms. Your character is allowed to question what is going on and where these feelings originated. Sometimes you're getting a stew and you need to stop yourself from thinking about eating a dwarf instead. Sometimes you see a child and briefly think about the tragedy of a young life ended. Sometimes you see a hand and can't help but tear it off. Every time you are able to determine if you lean into the urge or reject it with all your might. And all of it is accompanied by the narrator's most seductive voice, so everything sounds scandalous as well.
The death of a child. A timeless tragedy that never grows old.
It is deliriously fun to not just be a murder hobo, but a creative murder hobo, doing all these wildly evil things and having these depraved thoughts. Then, the lovely bard Alfira comes to your camp. This is where the Dark Urge story really starts, because you can't help but kill her in your sleep. The next night, a creepy little butler guy will come for you and proclaim you his mistress, giving you your first boon and tantalizing you with hints of your dark past. Act 2 Dark Urge is where the storyline becomes more important, because this is where you make some big decisions and start to learn the real stakes at the heart of your affliction. You get the instruction from your butler to kill a particular person, but you learn later that that person is vital to the livelihood of a whole group of people. If you kill her, and by proxy kill the entirety of the Last Light Inn, you unlock the Slayer form, a powerful demonic form that is built to kill large swaths of enemies in a brutal rampage. It is a whole lot of fun and can make you feel like a titan, especially in boss fights where you stare down your foe with this large, multi-armed demon form and tank hit after hit while you murder everyone. 10 out of 10 would slay again. If you refuse, however, you get a second scene where the butler says the powers that be disapprove, and you'll need to kill your lover in order to satisfy the craving for blood. You can save them, and it is actually a beautiful and touching scene if you do, but you also have the chance to fail, which leads to the tragic death of your loved one. And what is more fanfiction than a scene where your evil urges try to overcome you to kill the one you love most, and you need to heroically hold yourself back to keep them safe? It's downright fanfiction fodder! But it only gets better, because while Act 2 ends with the bad guys hinting that they know you, Act 3 smacks you with the biggest plot twist in RPG history. Okay, so maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but can you really blame me for my choice of words when the twist is that you were the ultimate architect of the big bad plot all along? Yeah, that's pretty dang big! You are not just some person with the urge to kill. You are the child of Baal, god of murder, who came up with the entire plot to steal the crown of Karthus and enslave an Elderbrain with the other two chosen. You stole the crown from the devil Mephistopheles. You created the Absolute. You made the tadpoles that infect everyone's brains. It was all your plan. But Orin is your sister, and she is jealous of your father's love, and so she ambushed you, poking holes in your brain and infecting you with the first tadpole so she could become Baal's new chosen. Do you know how wild that is? You're the child of an evil god, you made the entire plan that you are now trying to thwart, and one of the evil factions you were supposed to destroy is actually one you used to control, now run by your sister. It is textbook fanfiction goodness! And I know someone is going to feel offended by my use of the fanfiction comparison because you're going to feel like I'm using it to diminish the value of the storyline. But I assure you that I say this with absolute awe. The beauty and wonder of fanfiction is that it gives you what you want even when it's overly indulgent. The Dark Urge is indulgent. It gives you all those scenes and connections that makes you overly important, overly special, and overly powerful. Everything is now about you. It was all because of you. And why not? This is a game I'm playing for the enjoyment of myself. Why not have everything be about me? So many NPCs treat you differently in Act 3 because of who you are to the story. Volo discovers your true nature and confronts you about it. You get a full one-on-one fight to the death with Orin to enact your vengeance or take back your throne. Even Withers is tied to your dark destiny. And with all these revelations, you get to choose to either regain or reject your father's legacy, both of which lead to huge and gratifying conclusions where you can be a fully redeemed character who has overcome the worst to be a better person, or a powerful evil born to rule the world and everyone in it. It feels like canon, like this story was about you overcoming or embracing your birthright all along. I don't even know how anyone can handle not playing the Dark Urge, because how do you play this game and choose to not be this important to the story? It just feels like more of everything. More stakes, more romance, more drama, more connections to every character, more bloodshed and tragedy, more heroics. It just feels so good to play this character, and like I said before, everything is still custom. You don't have to always choose the Dark Urge options. You can choose just to save Gale as normal, or refuse to torture Liam, or ignore the bloodlust when talking about your condition. The Dark Urge isn't just two possible stories. It's just two more outcomes in the long list of opportunities this game gives you. It's just fun. I don't know how better to sell it than to tell you I was giggling like a maniac every moment something with the Dark Urge surprised me. Everything about the Dark Urge is the highlight of Act 3. But Act 3 is more than just the Dark Urge. Act 3 is the climax of an epic it probably took over 60 hours to get to. And unfortunately, it's the only thing about this game I have to find fault in. Act 3 is the only stain on an otherwise perfect tapestry, and to talk about it, I'm going to have to jump into spoilers immediately. Act 3 takes place in the city of Baldur's Gate, and this is the weakest location of the acts. We've been through hag dens and cursed temples and underground fish villages, and now your party is exploring a city. A normal, if not large and imposing city. And it's kinda stylistically boring. It's just a normal city, and the outskirts of Rivington are just a normal village. There are interesting things dotted inside both, but nothing that feels like a set piece like in Act 1. Okay, except for the Temple of Murder, that's a frickin' set piece. Now this isn't to say that there is nothing to do. There are plenty of quests, ranging from companion conclusions to finding the remains of an eviscerated clown, and those are epic quests that feel important. But unlike in Act 1 and 2, where a quest might make you explore an area for a couple hours before you moved on, these quests are all pretty tightly contained. The quest lines are still fantastic. I don't want to give the impression that you are going to be disappointed by the ending of the companion quests or by the main story. That all is still truly good. It's just the location makes everything feel smaller. It might have to do with everything being so closely packed together. This is where you face Astarion's Old Master, and this is where you face Lae'zel's final quest, and this is where Shadowheart needs to go. It's all so close that each location never gets the gravitas that a cinematic end goal should get. It's also really hard to navigate in this city, even ignoring the wardens that have the potential to give you trouble every time they see you, depending on your choices. Finding Laura's home or the Crimson Drought is its own chore because nothing is labeled and no one tells you approximately where some of these places are. And maybe it was just my game, but my map did not have markers to lead me for most of these quests. The city also loads very slowly. I would have to wait a good minute for the city to pop in layer by layer. I experienced my first crashes here as well while facing bosses. And then the endings. I played a bad guy run, so my first run ended rather abruptly when I took over the world. To be fair though, I literally controlled everyone's mind, so yeah, there wasn't much for them to say to me anymore. But when I did the ending again and didn't pick the full evil option, I got kind of quick endings where I did say goodbye to some of my companions and talk to others, but it was just so short. And again, I was already on a heavily evil path, so I do think the nature of my choices influenced a lot of sparsity in my ending because I killed a lot of people. Like, a lot of people. So I didn't have too many friends who loved me enough to want to see me. But it was still a bit short and abrupt for the over 80 hours I put into the rest of the run. But here's the thing about all these complaints. I want to be honest, so I included them in this rant, but if you were to ask me if these issues ruined Act 3 for me, my answer would honestly be no. I prefer fantastical settings to cities, and I like exploration, so I think I was always going to like Baldur's Gate less as a location than the previous maps. The bugs are there, but they still aren't bothersome to the point where I despised them. Even the ending wasn't the worst, just not what I wanted after this grand adventure. Like, I wanted a Return of the King level of epilogue content that could take up another hour of my time, and I'd still crave more. Act 3's story gripped me. The fights almost felt like a boss rush with how frequently I was taking on major villains. The characters I met and dealt with were fun and intriguing. My story and my companion stories all felt exceptional, and I was constantly held by a feeling of doubt, as every decision I made felt like a major life-altering one. And I was a bad guy, which I cannot overstate enough. There are probably more things to see and experience in Act 3 that I didn't get to because I killed so many important characters in Acts 1 and 2. And yet I still had so much to do and a ton of fun doing it. And to top it all off, the problems I do have, or at least some of them, are being addressed by Larian Studios now. They already put out a patch to give Karlach another more satisfying ending, and they have acknowledged the loading issues in Act 3, amongst a whole laundry list of tweaks and features to make the game that much better. Which is why, even though as it currently is, Act 3 is a bit of a letdown for me, I don't feel like it really diminishes the overall greatness of the game. It has what is truly necessary for the conclusion to feel right, and Larian seems to be fixing everything else as we speak. There is just too much to say about Baldur's Gate 3. The game itself is just so big, taking over 60 hours for a single playthrough with 3 maps, each with dozens of sub-areas and secret treasures, quests, and details. I didn't even get to touch on the character customization, the companion origins, the lack of microtransactions, the bestest boys, modding, crafting, and loot, or even the multiplayer, because you can play this game with 3 of your friends and just wreak havoc across the world, and it is just as fun as a serious playthrough by yourself. But there isn't enough time in the world for me to try to explain why I love this game so much, why I've played it so much. Why this video was so hard to make, not because finding the words was difficult, though that is also true, but because every minute I was writing about this game, I just wanted to play it instead. It's addictive, it's exhilarating, and it's just so good. If it isn't obvious right now, this is my game of the year. And it's been a great year for video games, so that is no easy feat. I think it's crazy that we have a game that's so lovingly crafted and continues to be cared for by its studio. I think it's wild that a game so big really feels like it's a personal experience. I think it's incredible that after you finish the game, there's still so much left to see. Play Baldur's Gate 3. That's the rant. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know how your playthrough of Baldur's Gate is going, and I will see you in 5 more months when I decide I'm finally done with this game. Bye-bye!